All right, Lauren, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Originally from South Florida, Miami. Went to school at Florida State. Got in. Was originally a hospitality major. I did that for about 2 months and realized probably wasn't the direction I wanted to go. Ended up getting my degree in finance. Um, but as I was in school, I started working in hospitality.
Yeah.
And though I didn't know a whole lot about hospitality, I had integrity, which was a lot more than a lot of the people in the business, in college town, so to speak. So I had some minor successes up in Tallahassee. And then, I was an honest guy. I wasn't, taking money or whatnot. And so that opened up some opportunities for me and to invest in a little dive bar out in San Francisco, Lower Haight neighborhood. So I did that back in about 2004. Best experience, worst experience.
Is that still
Um,
is that bar still there?
I believe so. It used to be called Mickey's Barbecue, and now I believe it's called Mickey's
Do you know?
in the
I think
Lower
I
Haight.
know. I think I know the bar. I think I did a
Yeah,
pub crawl there. Very professional for a podcast. I think I did a pub crawl there once. Um,
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. It actually had a great history. I had a distant uncle that owned it for many years, and then just wanted to get out. And I was coming up, and it was, being a 24-year-old kid with the opportunity to own a dive bar in San Francisco is opportunity hard to pass up. So I
Yeah.
jumped
No.
on that.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I jumped on that. And a year later, I was coming back home, kind of with my tail between my legs, not sure what to do with my life. So at that point, I realized I needed real good, strong corporate structure. To really understand, the fundamentals, so to speak, the blocking and tackling of
Yeah. Yeah.
operations of our business. So then I went and I worked for. I got on with Hard Rock. And I moved back to California. I actually wanted to go back to San Francisco. They said, "Well, how about Sacramento?" And I said, "Let's give it a try." Sacramento was
Yeah.
actually great.
Great beer
Uh,
culture up there, I believe. Lots of
yeah, yeah.
breweries.
Well, it was great because I could be in Lake Tahoe, San Francisco, or Napa Valley on any of my
Yeah.
days off. So I still went back, worked with Hard Rock for about 6 years, and out on the West Coast, and really got a strong foundation for operations, culture, global branding, things of that nature. And then eventually moved back home with my family, back to Miami, and worked kind of worked for small and pop venues that were on diners, drive-ins, and dives, and then also worked for a large nightlife operation here in Miami. One of the most iconic venues in the heart of Havana. So I got to learn that side of the business. Um, and then repartnered up with Grove Bay Hospitality about 2.5 years ago. And I've been with them for the last 2.5 years, just overseeing various operations, Michelin star venues, opening, $15 million high volume operations, fully outdoor,
Yeah.
partnering with celebrity chefs like Jeremy Ford to open up venues with them. So it's been a great 2.5 years, but that's kind of my journey.
That's awesome, man. I was gonna say there's so much to unpack there.
Yeah.
But I guess, you're such a seasoned vet now already in hospitality. I'm curious, like, now that you're like what do you say, 2.5 years in at Grove, is it like, what do you see are like, especially like Miami's such an interesting place as well, like, you know what I mean, for hospitality, like such a hotbed. I'm curious your take on like what you think are like your three biggest roadblocks. Like what's like really kind of like, challenging for you as such a leader in operations today?
I think the biggest challenge right now is talent. Is getting talent that really understands the fundamentals.
Yeah.
I think it's funny because I tell stories of how when I was coming up, we'd look at the managers and be like, oh, he's an old timer, and now I'm the old timer, now we're the old timers. So
Yeah.
um, kind of have to adapt our we operate to this kind of new world. I think what kind of happened with this boutique operators and the advent of kind of like the Food Network and whatnot in the last 15, 20 years, I think a lot of the fundamental needs of any business, including hospitality, have kind of been put to the wayside. People think they just come in and work at a cool restaurant, but they don't really have the backbones of managing labor. They don't really understand how to control cost of goods. They're not really passionate about hospitality. And so those are the fundamentals that are needed to run a business in our industry.
Yeah.
And I guess in most industries. But I think that that's been lost. And it's hard to find people who really have that strong background. Partly because when I was younger, you would get that from a corporate operation, and those aren't around as much. They're not cool to go work for those as much. So people aren't going and learning what they need to learn to be able to do that. They're going to work for a celebrity chef or maybe a local chef that's very popular, but he does it his way. And that's not necessarily giving the the structure, the fundamentals that are needed. So I think that number one, that's a big challenge. I also think number two is getting in Miami, the cost of living has skyrocketed. Inflation is outrageous, and there's the hotels have really driven up the market for talent, whereas the restaurants, where we operate on such small margins, don't really have the money to spend on the talent. So it's made it really, really challenging. You're a manager in Miami making $75,000 a year. You probably need 3 roommates to live and to make it by, or you're still living at home. Or you're living in not the best part of town. So that makes it also very challenging. It's just kind of post-COVID inflation. And then everybody and their mother moved to Miami during COVID. Everybody opened up restaurants. So there's not enough infrastructure in Miami from a people standpoint to supply the demand. So it's been very, very challenging to find great people. Now, we found some great ones, some great team members, in recent months and within the last year, whatnot. You always find, some really good ones and hang on to them. But it's been very challenging to navigate that. I think those are the 2 biggest challenges right now that we see in the marketplace. Yeah.
They kind of stem from each other, like the number one talent, and then like competition from like hotels and people moving in, just putting an extra demand on labor, making it harder for you to even compete for them. Like it's interesting because you're not alone in that sort of space. Like I've spoken to people who run restaurants literally all over the country on these podcasts now, and the number one thing that everybody is facing is a dearth of talent. And it's interesting, like in the north of 18 months I've worked at Landed, when I started, the big topic du jour was ghosting and getting bodies in the restaurant. Like everyone was getting ghosted for interviews. And I don't hear anybody talking about ghosting anymore. And then was just like, we need bodies, we need volume, we need candidate volume. And that then over the last, like, say, year has very much veered into, we need quality candidates now. Like we're trying to like step up our operation, but how do I find that quality? To the point that now what I hear again and again is actually like retention, that the competition is so high that retention has to be a huge focus for, like, if you've got the employees, how do you invest and keep them? And I'm curious in your sense then, like, how do you think about like sort of like retention of employees, given you're in such a battleground for talent in Miami?
Well, it's a topic of discussion within our group, on a weekly basis. We're consistently trying to find ways or look at different things from different angles. I think first and foremost, we're in a people business, and at the end of the day, we have to treat people with respect and follow our core values day in and day out. At the end of the day, people, yeah, people want to bounce around to make more money. Hey, I can go take this job for an extra $2,000 a year here. Then, 3 years later, they're making an extra $10, $15, $20,000 a year. But at the end of the day, they still have to work side by side with another human being, work with people. And if they don't communicate well, if it's not a healthy environment, then what's the point? So I think we really focus on creating positive work environments for our teams, uh, being being good communicators, better communicators, listening, and really doing our best to achieve that. So that way, people can feel comfortable about coming to work on a daily basis. We don't. I've worked for owners who expect you to turn, water into wine. It's just unreasonable expectation.
Yeah.
And we don't really try to we don't put unreasonable expectations on our team. We have high standards, and we hold our teams accountable to that. But we also understand that we're humans. Sometimes we make mistakes, and and we go from there. Other things we look at is time off, benefits packages. How can we improve those? How can we make the work-life balance better, especially in our industry, which has always been challenging? Um, and so
Yeah, totally.
we're constantly trying to see, you know, look at different ways to drive that. And sometimes we try things, they don't work. Sometimes we try things and they do work. I guess that's the normal organic process there.
Yeah.
But there hasn't been a one thing. I think or the one thing we have hit on is just being humans, and creating good work environments for people to come and work on a daily basis. You
Yeah.
don't have to worry about being yelled at, screamed at, if you didn't do something right. It's okay. We understand, where do we go wrong here? Having a
Well,
conversation.
it's interesting you allude to that, because that's definitely something that I've heard just in our own research about people who've gone to work at like Amazon fulfillment centers from hospitality, or people who've left, like, gone to DoorDash or Uber Eats, which has been like, working in a kitchen, working in restaurants, for an extremely stressful environment. And obviously sometimes, chefs can roar, people people can be roared at. And I guess,
Yeah.
like, some people are just like, yeah, no, never again. Like, I'm just gonna go to Amazon, put my headphones in, listen to a podcast, and fill boxes for the afternoon.
Yeah.
Um, but it's interesting, as well, like, trying to kind of feel your way around sort of retention. And it's a weekly topic to discuss it, because obviously there are North Star metrics you look at, which is like, what is churn under certain managers in certain restaurants, and how do you like have conversations with them. I'm curious though, in terms of like this sort of post-COVID, uh I hate saying post-COVID, because it's like it's been like 2 years now nearly. So like, I mean, we're kind of yeah, we're past it now. We're past post-COVID. But like, I think in terms of like those trends that have happened, because one of the things I hear is there was a gap of people coming into hospitality, where normally hospitality is like a feeder for like teenagers, first jobs, people kind of coming into college, want to go to hospitality school. Those kind of things didn't really happen in that kind of period of time. And there's like a gap of people that have now come into the market that have a different expectation of like what working in a restaurant or working in hospitality is like, which is might jar with sort of us as the older fogies. Are you seeing things in a sort of younger workforce in terms of like trends that you see that you will have to adapt to?
Absolutely. You know, yes, I think we're in the process of still quantifying what those are, and how to react to those. But absolutely, it's a completely different mentality. And like I said, earlier in the podcast, I'm an old guy now, and so that's how we have old theories and old processes, and we have to adapt to what's happening in the market now. What those things is our training processes. A lot of our training, what we're doing now is creating. We're utilizing an app to do a lot of our training. On your mobile
Yeah.
device, at the job. That includes, it's interactive. So it's fun. I mean, it's not cartoonish, but almost to the point. So we've been we've been involving a lot of our training process into those types of platforms.
Yeah.
Makes it easier for people to learn, makes it more engaging, more fun, things of that nature. And then being patient, learning
Yeah. Who knew?
to be patient, and then also communicating more effectively, understanding what's important to the new generation. Work-life balance is critically important.
Yeah.
I mean, not that's important to everybody, but it's more prevalent, and they're more passionate about it than I guess we were, 20 years ago or so. Communication, making sure that we are better communicators than we were before is critical. Making sure that our tone is right, that our timing is right, that our content is right, and then owning our mistakes and showing humility when the time requests or when the
Yeah.
time needs is important as well. So I think we're still navigating that, and we don't fully
Yeah.
understand it yet. But it's definitely something that we're aware of, and we make definitely put effort into. But I think the biggest part has been our training. If I had
Yeah.
to select one thing, yeah, absolutely.
And that's because you kind of made it very bespoke. Like you didn't really buy, you're saying, well, how did you describe, what was the phrase you used? Not like it's a bit colorful. What did you say? It's a bit, you used a phrase to describe it, but like in the sense that you guys have made it very bespoke to what you need. And are you getting good feedback from your staff that this is actually great? Like, do you see the tangible impact that
Yeah,
intangible training is having on your workplace?
absolutely. I mean, we'll go into pre-shifts and we'll ask questions, about a process or product, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, they'll someone will raise their hand, they'll have the answer, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, we just completed our online course for that, for that
Oh, that's
particular
awesome.
item, and we just reviewed it." So yeah,
It's great
absolutely,
when they,
it has a huge impact.
that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, that's awesome. And so, like, tell me, like, your hottest take on the job market today. Like, Miami's obviously unique, but like, what's your take on the job market for hospitality?
The take on the job market for hospitality is it's extremely challenging. I think, it, right now. I mean, it's almost a crapshoot, to be honest with you. With all the experience we have, we go in, we interview, we go through our questions, we check the red flags, and then we still may hire some. I mean, I had 2 weeks ago where we hired a GM for one of our properties. A
Yeah.
week later, he resigned because he felt that it wasn't what he was expecting, even though we had clear communication and we went through a laundry list of of things, and we had
Yeah.
multiple steps of interview. So those things still happen where you feel like you communicated, and you feel like you got the right person, but within just a few short days, it becomes clear that they're not the right person. So
Yeah.
and likewise, we hire somebody and hired a GM for another restaurant, and they've turned out to be amazing.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any perfect situation here. It's just I also don't know if we become kind of numb. Maybe numb's not the right word, but we've gone through it
I
so
know what you
much in the
mean.
last 3 years, right? That
Yeah.
before we would be amazed that GM candidates would no show for their interviews,
Yeah.
and now it's like, oh yeah, another one no showed. It's bizarre. Somebody at this level would not show up or communicate or follow up, and say, hey, I'm not going to make it. Something came up. Can I reschedule?
Yeah.
It still happens all the time, and so we're not surprised by it as much. But it's extremely challenging. The job market is extremely challenging in Miami. Like I said, the supply and demand coupled with the hotel impact,
Yeah.
and then they're just Miami. I would say Miami in the last 10-15 years has come farther. If you took all the time before, let's say 2000 or 2005. It took all the time before that. It's come farther from then to now, from a culinary standpoint. I mean, it's blown up as
Yeah.
far as food. Miami was never known as a food town. I don't know if it's known as a food town right now, but you have your San Francisco's and your New York's and your New Orleans and Chicago, places like that. Miami was never part of that, but I think it's getting closer.
Oh man, I think you need to give it more credit. I feel like everybody's talking to me about Miami and about the food culture there and like the restaurant culture there, like how it's just like stores. And to your point, it's like I feel like everybody has visited since COVID except for me. You know, like like I need to go. I had a call with a guy in Florida, and he mentioned the phrase Florida fatigue, in the sense that Florida was open so early that everybody has visited Florida.
Oh yeah.
Like everyone has been now since COVID or during COVID, which I thought was a great phrase.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, this summer was the worst summer we've had in a long time. That's because
Really
during COVID, this summer was brutal in Miami for hospitality. Yeah, it
interesting.
was it was extremely, extremely challenging. And our theories are that, for 2 or 3 years, everybody was coming to Miami. For one, it was open. Then last year, a lot of locals did not leave, where oftentimes, locals in the summertime leave and they go on travel.
Yeah.
Last year they did not, because they still weren't. And this year was like the perfect storm. Everybody in the world had already come to Miami, and then locals, so they were going to other places, and then locals were traveling. So this was the hardest summer, but we had to remind ourselves that the 3 years before, when the rest of the world was struggling, Miami was on top of the world,
Yeah.
So we forgot
Ebbs and
that pretty
flows.
quick.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we forgot that really quick, that we had amazing 3 years while everybody else was closed or struggling. And then this year, was really challenging for us. So, but we've,
That's
we
interesting.
made it. Yeah.
That's interesting you say that, because that's the second person from Florida that said it to me. And obviously I don't hear that from any other state, because you guys were the only ones that were basically open as a destination.
Yeah.
I suppose the last question I have for you before you wrap is, all the examples you gave me about the job market were GMs, which I think is interesting, in the sense that, like, you don't see much of a problem. Is there a much bigger problem getting GMs than there are just staff into the restaurant?
Yes, because it's a much more focused skill set, I think, and it's harder to find the right fit. We've seen a big increase on applications across the board. In fact, October was our best hiring month we had all year. We just reviewed this earlier today, where we brought in just under 100 people into the company in all different facets, or different areas, including all of our venues. But GMs, yes, because of our expectations and standards, and the other thing is we operate. All of our restaurants are different. We have fine dining, we have casual, we have venues that are completely outdoor, and then we also operate airport concessions. So finding the right fit for, someone may be a great fit for one of our concepts, but not a great fit for another concept. So it's, there's a lot that goes into that. Whereas, a server has a skill set, they could serve in casual dining or an upscale dining, just depending on their specific skill set. But it's easier to train somebody who is has worked in casual dining to work in a more upscale dining than it would be to take a GM from a casual dining environment to a fine dining environment. That wouldn't really flow so well. Be as easy. So I think it's very difficult.